Well, it is spooky season. From Bad to Cursed by Lana Harper is the second instalment of the Witches of Thistle Grove series. And no, I haven't read the first one because I didn't know there was a first one until I was about halfway through this one. And to be fair, instead of being a direct sequel, these books are more adjacent. The events of this one happen after the first one, but it follows a different character. I'd guess it's more comparable to something like Discworld, but not as funny. From Bad to Cursed follows Isidora, or Issa, Avramov, a witch of Thistle Grove. The Avramov family are dark and twisted, their magic nestled in the bleak art of necromancy and hexes. Which is why, when a thorn witch, whose powers stem from nature, is attacked during a festival, blame is likely to fall at the Avramov's doorstep. As per witch tradition, Issa is allowed to help with the investigation, but unfortunately she is partnered with her arch-nemesis, Rowan Thorn. Will they find the truth without killing each other? Or will another nefarious curse destroy any hope of harmony between the different witching families? So, essentially, in Thistle Grove there are various witching families, all living together in peace, started many years ago by their ancestors. The Avramovs are your typical wicked witch flavour. They can summon demons, talk to spirits, and cast all sorts of nasty spells. The Thorns are more like your green witches, working pretty magic with flowers and fruits and what have you. There's also the Blackmores, who specialise in glamour and illusion. I think they were more at the heart of the first book, though. A Blackmore has been in charge of the Witch Society for many years, like a sort of magical mayor. Until recently, when another witch took over from the Harlow family. I have no idea what the Harlow's deal is, they don't come into this story at all. Only one Harlow is mentioned, the magical mare, and all she does is exist occasionally. So I can only assume they have the power of pointless bureaucracy. Yay! The events of the book are set around Beltane, originally a Celtic festival held probably on May 1st, or possibly November 1st, where they celebrated the beginning of summer by driving cattle between two bonfires, according to a 10th century source. These witches have axed the cattle thing, sadly. During the competition to see who will be crowned the May Queen. Dang, we had something called the May Queen and not one reference to Led Zeppelin. Holly Thorne, I just realised how stupid a name that is attacked by a misbegotten curse. So this book is part whodunit, part urban fantasy, and part romance, which is a curious collection of genres, but not one I'm opposed to. Did it live up to its potential? As you can guess, I do like the idea of this book. I quite like seeing different genres working together, and as a fan of both fantasy and mystery, and a lover of anything romantic, the setup and the plot are right up my street. I like the setting of Thistle Grove as a concept. A town filled with normal people, living their best lives, surrounded by weird and wacky tourist traps, and completely unaware of the legit, strange and supernatural things lurking in the dark and... What do you know? There's even a powerful trickster demon that shows up occasionally. Harper does have a flair for using language creatively and poetically when she's describing the landscape and settings. There are some lovely passages describing the lake and the sky and the woods which are quite beautiful to read, and I also enjoyed her description of the Arcane Emporium, which is a sort of witch's supply shop which the Avmarovs run as well as their haunted house attraction. Unfortunately, this does not translate very well to other areas of description, but I'll get to that later. I think the mystery element is alright. I can't lie and say it's perfect, but it certainly intrigued me, and I think the main thing that got me to the end of the book was wanting to know who was behind the nasty magic. And there are some nice details I quite liked. The objects used in various spells and rituals interested me. I just wish there was a bit more of that. And yeah, okay, I do kind of dig that over-the-top gothic aesthetic they have going on here. I like animals, so I was pleased that Issa has various pets. Again, I wish they'd featured more, along with the various ghosts in the house, but... And I enjoyed the fact that each family is meant to be influenced by their roots. The Avmarovs were from East Europe, initially, and the Thorns are descended from Irish Druids. I can only assume that the Blackmores were Welsh with their obsession with Prince Arthur, or maybe French? And I suppose the Harlows were descended from this guy. My biggest problem is probably the world building, and I don't know how much of that was this book's fault. This is technically the second in the series, and so I don't know how much was done in the first book. But even so, I didn't get much of an impression of the setting. Thistlegrove didn't have enough grounding for me. I don't know where anything is in conjunction to anything else, or the scale. One town seems a bit small to have either 3 or 4 different tourist traps, all of which are quite big. The Avmarovs have their haunted house and Witches R Us. The Thorns have their haunted maze and what sounds like the greatest bakery of all time. And the Blackmoors have a Camelot-inspired theatre where they butcher Arthurian legends. As for the Harlows, I don't know, world's biggest laminator? Also, I don't really understand the magic here. Each family has a particular affinity for one of these types of magic, but what if your mum's a Thorn and your dad's a Blackmoor? Is it a toss-up if you're going to have plant powers or illusion powers? Or do you get both? Or neither? What if you're like Seamus Finnegan?
My dad's a muggle. Mum's a witch. Bit of a nasty shock for him when he found out.
Do you have magic or not? Or just weaker magic? How have they managed to keep the truth of their magic from the normies in the town? And yes, that is what they are called. Surely they must have some inkling that things aren't right. Unless the Thistlegrove's version of the blind eye exists too. What is the gene pool like? These families have been in the US for a good number of generations. Are they into marrying with the normies and other families, or do they have extra toes and wet fingers? It's not very clear from this book with how clean-cut the divisions between magic and families are, and how separated they are from the normies. But then again, Gabrielle Thorne, who's Rowan's mum, married into magic according to Lana, Issa's mum, on page 148, which to me implies that she wasn't magic before. But then on page 222 we have the passage, Gabrielle Thorne, the only Thistlegrove witch whose green magic was strong enough that it attracted its own ever-changing retinue of followers. So, if you marry a witch, do you become magic? How does this work? Again, maybe it's explained in the first book, but it just feels like a lot of those basic pieces of world building were missing. Side note, how fun would it be to have a story set in this sort of badly hidden magic town from the perspective of the non-magical folk, navigating life with all this weirdness going on? A bit like Patrick Ness's The Rest of Us Just Live Here, but with less heartbreak and more humour. As I said earlier, Harper can craft some nice passages of description, but doesn't always meet the mark. Her descriptions of characters are generally quite boring, and the sort of overly pretty language that makes books like these feel like they are inhabited solely by stunningly beautiful people, and mere plain mortals like ourselves are not allowed to exist there. And I found the constant referral to the size of Rowan's shoulders and hands and muscles and calves to be a little off-putting. She also tried far too hard to make the description of the demon lady in the opening sound beautiful but scary, and it just kind of came across as weird. This line in particular gave me a lot of pause. Then she smiled at me, wide and feral, a flash of onyx teeth capped with fanged canines and incisors. 2 problems. Firstly, canines and incisors are teeth. So her teeth are capped with teeth.
What'll it be, Dadu? The calamari or the squid?
The calamari is squid.
What am I supposed to be imagining here? Because all I'm conjuring up is like double-decker teeth, which isn't beautiful or scary, it's just weird. Secondly, fanged canines is a superfluous description because canines are fanged. A fang is a canine, and a canine is a fang.
Calamari is squid.
I don't particularly care for fanged incisors either, because as far as I'm concerned, a fanged incisor is not an incisor. I figure that Harper is trying to show that all the weird demon ladies' teeth are pointy, including the front ones, but there are better, less awkward ways of doing it that don't send me down rabbit holes of teeth definitions. And yes, whilst part of an incisor definition is that they're at the front, not all animals have incisors, so I think it more means that whilst not all front teeth are incisors, all incisors are at the front of the mouth. So all of this could have been avoided by telling us that the weird demon lady had a mouth full of flashing onyx fangs. Job done. My other issue with the description was the clothes. Now generally I don't care for long descriptions of clothes, especially if it's set in the modern world. I understand it more in historical or futuristic or other world-based stories where clothing might represent more than just clothes, or be telling the reader something about the world or characters. But in a book like this, they don't add anything. However, I get why she's done it in this particular book. The story is told from Issa's perspective, and Issa is interested in fashion design. However, I don't think just describing what every character is wearing is a particularly good way of showing this. We don't get much of Issa's thoughts on the pieces she's looking at, nor how they align with her particular tastes, so we don't really learn anything about her apart from Issa likes clothes. And even then we already knew that. If it weren't for the occasional mentions of her making some outfits, it wouldn't even be that obvious she likes making clothes. She could just like them. And the descriptions are, again, just boring. Just listing what people are wearing, which reminds me of something. The next day I woke up in my coffin. I put on a black miniskirt that was all ripped around the end and a matching top with red skulls all over it and high-heeled boots that were black. I put on 2 pairs of skull earrings and 2 crosses in my ears. I spray-painted my hair with purple. In the Great Hall, I ate some Count Chocula cereal with blood instead of milk, and a glass of red blood. Suddenly, someone bumped into me. All the blood spilled over my top. "Bastard!" I shouted angrily. I regretted saying it when I looked up, because I was looking into the pale white face of a gothic boy with spiky black hair and red streaks in it. He was wearing so much eyeliner that I was going down his face, and he was wearing black lipstick. He didn't have glasses anymore, and now he was wearing red contact lenses just like Draco's, and there was no scar on his forehead anymore. He had a manly stubble on his chin. He had a sexy English accent. He looked exactly like Joel Madden. He was so sexy that my body went all hot when I saw him, kind of like an erection, only I'm a girl, so I didn't get one, you sicko. Also, Issa's fashion design dreams are to start a line of ready-to-wear fashion, instead of the costume-like pieces sold at the Emporium, but everything she wears sounds like a costume, which just didn't sit right with me. I wasn't particularly invested in the characters, they all just feel very generic. Issa is the main character who's snarky and feisty, but also likes cuddly animals, so wow, that's unexpected. She's also vulnerable because she has anxiety and gets a panic attack, but unfortunately the author completely failed to convince me of either of those things, and honestly I think she forgot herself, apart from when it felt suitably dramatic. Which isn't how anxiety works. Let me tell you. Rowan is big and handsome and really kind, except to Issa because enemies to lovers trope, I guess. And an upstanding citizen, except when he's between the sheets, am I right? No one else was important or given that much page time, apart from maybe Elena, who's Issa's mum, who was just a typical matriarch character. There was a sister who left so little impact, I've actually forgotten her name and everything about her. Letha is the best friend who only seems to exist sporadically. And there were some others, I guess, like Rowan's twin sister, with whom he enjoys a very close familial bond, who never turns up. Wow, clearly such an important relationship. The romance is just Issa thirsting over Rowan while complaining about him. They sort of bond over shared opinions like, hey, the environment is important, guys, and nothing else. Then they get drunk and make out. Then he's regretful and she hates him again. Then he suddenly turns all romantic and they get it on in an underground Turkish bath. Tale as old as time. The enemies to lovers was kind of stupid as well, because the reason they hate each other is petty as hell, and it was from like 10 years ago, which makes both of them really, really bad for holding grudges, which is always a great trait to look for in a romantic relationship. Oh, and spoilers, there's a third act breakup, because of course there is, which actually only happens at the finale, which is then resolved a chapter later over the course of about a page. And it was lame. Now, I don't mind third act breakups if they make sense, and at least the reason for this one was solid, but don't put it in if you're gonna wimp out on the angst and then have them get over it immediately. The dialogue is not human dialogue, it's caught between Gen Z nonsense and very mature language that doesn't blend well. Actually, this whole book is like that. Different opposing ideas are just thrown together with no work to actually make them fit. It's just awkward to read. All the characters have to be hilarious and snarky all the time, which is exhausting. The flirty dialogue, especially during your spicy, steamy scenes, is just... Duh. I did not enjoy it. On the plus side, there were only a couple of those scenes, and they were mercifully short. Also, there was a strange running joke about zodiac signs and Rowan trying to guess Issa's, which pleased no one. Either you're into zodiac signs, in which case it's so painfully obvious which one she is that it's irritating, or you don't, in which case the whole thing is tedious. She's a Leo, by the way, because of course she is. It is the best star sign after all. And now for the random stuff that annoyed me. The Avramovs mention a goddess in their motto, but never tell us who she is. Why, you'd think she'd be important. Rowan unironically uses the word gnarly. Multiple times. No, people call each other cuz, as in cousin, which is definitely not how cousins talk to each other. It is cringe. The way Honey Cake Cottage looked like the most harmonious domain out of all 4 family holdings, like something delicately grafted into our world from some enchanting storybook. And not the Brothers Grimm kind that our family tended to emulate. Have you ever read a Brothers Grimm story? Because if you have, you'll know that while some events are kind of grim, Aesthetically, they are saccharine, sweet, and filled with birds and flowers and talking foxes like a good Victorian story should be, not the cheap horror movie stuff your family's into. Isa describes herself as the something wicked in Something Wicked This Way Comes. That is not what that means.
You keep using the word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
Something wicked is said by the witches, not about the witches. I should know. I'm playing a witch in Macbeth. It's my line! The politics was cringe and felt so forced. I didn't even disagree with any of it. Yes, we should be more sustainable. Yes, the human population should eat less meat. Yes, sexism and racism and other prejudices are bad. But you can't just throw these long conversations in willy-nilly and it completely halt the story to preach to the choir. It's boring. Why did it take these characters most of the book to actually research the evil hex cast at the beginning? Wouldn't that be the first place to look, both as part of an investigation to find out who would have access to the knowledge, and as part of the healing process in case there's a cure mentioned? But I guess they'd figure out the truth too quickly and the book would be over sooner, so, well, no. I wanted to like this more than I did. There are elements I liked, but they unfortunately were relegated to the background in lieu of kinda stupid romance and boring characters. The only plot I was invested in was the mystery, and even that required some stupid decisions to stretch it out to a full book. Will I go back and read the first one in the series? I don't think so. I just wasn't gripped by the writing or the world. Even with the information missing, I just don't care enough about what I was given to go back and find out more. And that's all I've got to say. See you next time.